Good afternoon and welcome to another episode of Summary Judgment Talk Show, transmitting live from the American News Media Center in Central Connecticut. I'm attorney Rachel Baird. I'm joined here by my legal investigator and the president of American News and Information Services, Ed Peruta. We do a weekly talk show anytime between 1 and 2. We try to go 1 at 1 and sometimes it's 2 o'clock. How you doing, Ed?
I'm doing better today than I was last week, and last week was better than the week before. I've still got a stiff neck, but we're good.
It's our post-Thanksgiving show. Today is Saturday, November 28th.
Right.
You had mentioned right before going on the air, and I said save it for the show, Ed. You wanted to talk about the pardon for General Flynn this week.
So I...
Is it General Flynn or Attorney Flynn?
General Flynn.
Okay.
He was the National Security Advisor to Donald Trump. He was indicted based on a lot of false information. He was kind of in the throes where the judge was starting to question the feds about what he got.
Yeah, but then the case was dismissed, and then didn't the judge want
Somebody was going to bring it back. The feds wanted to, whatever. Donald Trump pardoned them. Now, not that it means anything, but today, this morning I think, I read about a man who spent 31 years in prison for a minor nonviolent drug charge, and he got out.
What, was he pardoned by President Trump?
I don't think he was pardoned by Trump.
Okay.
I think so, but so I started thinking about that, and I know from news reports, and it came from both sides, what I consider the liberal and the conservative side, that General Flynn pled guilty because it had ruined him and his family financially. Ruined him. He lost everything. And I sat there and said, how many people have come into you? Now I've been with you for 12, 13 years maybe. How many people have walked into your office charged with a crime, had to retain legal counsel because they couldn't afford a public defender, or they could afford it, whatever. They didn't qualify for a public defender. And they go to court, and finally the charges are dropped or dismissed, i.e. Dwayne Dutel.
Yep.
Okay? A substantial amount of money was spent by the Dutel family to defend Dwayne against trumped up charges. Okay?
Yeah, what a lot of people don't recognize, though, and don't know, is that there are attorneys that feel bad about that cost, Ed.
Okay, you feel bad about it.
And so they don't charge the client. And so a lot of clients aren't paying as much as you think because the attorney's bearing a lot of the cost because they know how unfair it is too.
Can somebody get my phone out of here and take it back there or something, answer it back there, because I don't know whether it's coming in on the whatever. So here, to continue, there's a group of people, it's right here. There's a group of people who desire assistance to the downtrodden, to the people who can't afford whatever. Food stamps if they can't afford food. Legal aid if they can't afford lawyers to get divorced. There's a child's. What would happen if the government had to pay the attorney's fees of everyone who was arrested and the charges were dropped, dismissed? That with the dismissal comes attorney's fees. What would happen if they had to pay back General Flynn, and it may not work in a pardon situation, but when someone has their charges dismissed and the government, I can't say the state because the feds do it too, they keep it on the docket for a year, year and a half, lawyers come back to court, you don't sit there and say, like in my case back in the early 90s, Your Honor, just tell me when you want me here for the trial and I'll be here. But why do I have to keep coming back? I've been here every single court date. You know it, they know it, everybody knows it. Why? And the Judge Wagner, give him credit, told me, the prosecutor, give him a court date, Mr. Peruta, come back on the day of your trial.
Mm-hmm.
And I was there, and it was not guilty. But what if the government had to pay back General Flynn for all of his attorney's fees and costs?
This is how it could work. I think in England they may have a system similar to what you're saying. But in the United States, my first response would be the state would not drop a lot of cases.
Exactly.
Or they would either drop them right away or not drop them at all. But like in civil cases, when you bring a civil rights action, if you prevail, you're entitled to attorney's fees. But sometimes those cases settle, and it just settles for a specific amount. It doesn't say, oh, this is for the client, this is for the attorney. It just settles for a specific amount. The attorney either gets paid the hourly rate or usually a contingency fee. So in criminal cases, what could happen is, because the last thing I would want as a criminal defense attorney or a defendant is to have the state keeping my case alive because it didn't want to pay my attorney. So you opt out of that. The state could say, listen, we want to drop your case, but we don't want to pay your attorney. And you could say, okay, I will accept the dismissal and waive you having to pay my attorney. I think people should have that option, because some people are like, listen, between the option of just getting rid of this thing and me paying my attorney and hanging on and insisting you. So really it would only come down to the cases that the state hung on to and eventually had to drop before trial because the evidence was lacking, or the cases they took to trial and lost. Then they would definitely be on the hook for attorney's fees, because then they have no more leverage to bargain out of having to pay it. So it could work, Ed. That's my conclusion from all that.
Well,
it could work.
And I didn't want to interrupt you, but going all the way back to the initial beginning, the beginning of your conversations about this topic, you were talking about they would do one of two things. Drop the case immediately. Why would they do that?
Because a lot of cases are the cases that are not made by warrant. Like there's an arrest by warrant where an officer investigates, writes it up, a supervisor looks at it, they go before, they present it to a prosecutor, then if it gets to the judge, they swear to the judge, and the judge signs it. That's one kind of case. The other kind of case is where an officer stops you, comes to your house, whatever, and writes up a police report. Used to be, in fact, not that long ago, a lot of them, and then locks you up or gives you a promise to appear for 2 weeks. These aren't reviewed by anybody. I mean, I guess their supervisor signs off. Go ahead.
It's not really where I wanted to go. In other words, I thought you said they'll drop it to minimize. He had to hire a lawyer. In other words, I come into court first appearance, I got a lawyer.
Well, I could get there. I mean, I have a lot to say about it. So,
minimum $5,000. Mm-hmm. The minimum to a dismissed individual on the first day, his first appearance, is $5,000. And I'll give you an example.
Well, that's unreasonable.
Yeah. It is?
Yeah. It depends on the case, but most people in the lower GA courts, at least in Connecticut, aren't paying an attorney that much for one court appearance.
No. But there's a retainer agreement.
Yeah, well, at least in Connecticut, an attorney is only supposed to charge a reasonable fee. If you go to an attorney in Connecticut and they say, I have a flat fee of $5,000 non-refundable, that's not right. You got to earn it.
How much work does a lawyer put into the case before they walk in the first day?
Most of them zero.
Most of them zero.
Right.
Okay.
Because they don't have the police report.
They should get nothing.
They don't have the police
report. They should
report.
get nothing if it's dismissed on the first day.
Well, they show up.
Okay.
They show up.
Right. Say $500. Say $1,000.
I mean, sometimes there's a meeting with the client, but it's certainly not.
We're talking about a new theory.
Right.
We can't go on what was. We have to go on what could be, or what we'd like to see, or what people may have comments about. In other words, I'm saying that if you want to jerk around and make me drag my lawyer up here, you know, 18 times in a year and a half, okay? I'm paying the lawyer. And then when it comes time, you reduce the charge so it's an infraction. You're going to have it heard by an attorney, not even by a judge. There's not going to be a transcript of it. And you walk in, they want to nolly it, you get it dismissed, it's gone. They could have done that the first day. Now, there was a situation recently where the opinion was that the people on the other end of the phone, representing government, did not know the facts of what the hearing was about.
I really don't want to go into detail about that.
What I'm trying to say is, a prosecutor gets an arrest file from the police department. It comes into their office. They put it in a file. It's going to be heard on the 15th of January. The 15th of January, the morning of the 15th of January comes, and the prosecutor picks up the pile of folders of cases and walks into the courtroom. And you can watch him visually. I don't know what's, going through their head, but it goes like this. They open up the file. Man's charged with, continued. I don't think the prosecutor looked at the file.
You know they've changed that. They've implemented a new system where the prosecutors are supposed to look at the file first.
Are supposed to.
Yeah.
Are supposed to. It's going to be a lot to change what was into what's supposed to. Now, all I'm saying,
I got to tell you that even back in the 90s, when I was a prosecutor, people would come to court who were unrepresented, and they would stand in a long line, and if you were a newer prosecutor, you would be at the head of that line, and each person would come up, you'd look at their police report, and there's a lot of them that you would drop and just tell the person to go home.
Absolutely. And I have no doubt about that at all. What I'm trying to say is, I know for a fact that there are cases that are left on the docket, result in a dozen court appearances over the life of the case in the courtroom, and when you finally pick it up, open it up, study the facts, and get to the heart of it, case dismissed. But what they want to do is get you to plead to something. Instead of speeding, I get STC. State Traffic Commission sign. It's an infraction or something, but it's less than speeding. Or they come up and they say, on an interstate, they charged me with violation of STC, and the prosecutor had no place to move down to offer me a deal. So he said, plead guilty to a stop sign violation. There's no stop signs up on the highway. But just to get rid of it, plead guilty to a stop sign deal. All I'm trying to say, Rachel, is General Flynn spent a fortune on the issues that brought him down financially. And he should be entitled to be made whole based on what happened to him. And there's a lot more people that the same thing applies. And there could be some, like you say, there could be something worked out where maybe there's per court appearance. A lawyer wants to prepare for trial, but the client has no money. And you know that if you do what probably needs to be done or could be done, you're going to end up paying for it because the client has no money. And you're not a legal aid. You're not legal aid. But it doesn't qualify for legal aid.
But yet, you don't want to look bad in court. You have responsibilities in court.
Yeah. I mean, they've got a policy. They've got a policy. All I'm saying is, when I saw General Flynn had a pardon, there's been talk for a year. A year there's been talk about the problems with his case. And the federal government didn't want to let go of him. And now the president has chosen to say, I gave you every opportunity in the world to do it. You didn't, I'm gonna. And he did. And I have a lot of respect for him for doing it to General Flynn. It's just, it's wrong. It's scary to think that a person could be bankrupt by a false allegation.
So who do you think he should pardon next? I know Roger Stone is probably there on the list.
Oh yeah, I'm sure Robert Stone's on the list.
Roger Stone.
Right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
The white-haired guy.
Yep. This is who I would pardon if I were President Trump. I would look at all the people that Kamala Harris put in prison when she was a prosecutor for minor drug offenses, and I would pardon those people. And I would put the list out there. That's what I would do.
I read that there's people that would like the president to pardon some other people.
You know what? What an opportunity for Donald Trump.
Yeah.
What an opportunity for him to do some good without having to worry about a thing. Now, you know, somebody came to me a month or two ago with what I thought was a great idea, and I don't think I've said it on the show yet, but rest assured it isn't my idea. It's a really good one, though. They're going to be coming after Donald Trump.
Oh, yeah.
When he gets
Is
out.
there tissue back there? Go ahead.
Yeah, they're going to be coming after him once he gets out. And somebody had the bright idea, well, why doesn't he resign maybe a couple weeks before inauguration day?
Well, like Ford did to Nixon.
Well, let me finish. You said it kind of fast. Maybe people didn't catch it. Why doesn't he resign a couple weeks before inauguration day, and then Pence can pardon him? And you know, and I don't see anything wrong with that personally, because
I don't either.
They're going to be coming after him for no reason other than political reasons and political gain.
Retribution.
Right. And I don't see any problem. I don't even see it as an admission of guilt on his part if that were to happen. So good subject, Ed.
The liberal left is showing its colors. Example, and you know that I wanted to talk about this. Several weeks ago, right after the election, I said, okay, now let's go down through the list of promises made by the president-elect. And how do you do this? And if you don't, what about all of those people that voted for you because they wanted their student loans gone? And now there's this conversation, well, it really won't help the economy, and well, that we don't think that's going to happen. Right? Mm-hmm. And how does he explain to his base, okay, that no, I'm not going to relieve you of your student debt?
Now, where did you hear that he might not do that?
It was in the news.
Uh-huh.
I mean, obviously, I'm not at social gatherings in Washington D.C. or campaign rallies in the back room when they're talking, but they're sitting there saying that, and they don't say he's not going to. They say that he can't economically. It's okay. I understand.
I think if he's going to make that excuse, he should at least wait until he gets into office and then say, oh, if I knew how bad Trump made it, then I never would have, said we'd be able to do that. But now that I see how awful things are, that Trump ruined everything, and I'm not going to be able to do anything that I said I would, and it's all Trump's fault, that would seem more timely to me to say that, because that's what he's going to say.
There's a couple of shows on TV. One is called Dr. Pimple Popper. Okay? It's really gross shit that they get out of people's bodies,
Yeah, I don't like talking about it.
No, hold on a minute. And then there's another one that says bad skin or something like that, but it comes out of England. And a man walked into the doctor's office, and he had a growth on the back left side of his neck the size of a baseball under the skin. And, the doctor, how long have you had this? Oh, 15 years. 15 years. Oh, and it keeps growing, yeah. And it affects me psychologically, and, it's hard to socialize when you've got this big thing on your neck. And so he goes, well, why didn't you have it removed? And he goes, well, NHS said that it's not life-threatening, so it's not going to be covered. National health system. In other words, if it's not life-threatening or whatever, we're not going to pay for it. That's nationalized health service. So he had to, and another woman came in and said the same thing in England, that her insurance company wouldn't pay for it. She had to work in England, work to save the money to have the growth removed.
So she had insurance, but it's the National Health Service. Do you have insurance as well? Or?
In Great Britain,
Mm-hmm.
they have National Health Service,
Service, I think, yeah.
But you don't need insurance. Everybody's covered.
That's why.
Everybody has, quote unquote, national health insurance.
Right.
And you have to be evaluated to find out whether they're going to do what you want to do.
Well, I think under a lot of insurance policies that people have in the United States, with a deductible between $2,500 and $7,500 is the norm, then even if it is life-threatening, you're going to have to pay for it because your deductible comes first.
Right,
So,
no.
so at least in England they pay for things that are life-threatening. Here they don't pay for things that are life-threatening.
Medicare has a deductible.
Right.
For the elderly, Medicare has a deductible. But what I'm trying to say is, socialized medicine would change the whole planet, at least in this country. The entire country would be going crazy. And I'm sure that you're still going to have the option of an insurance company's advertisement saying, you want to have national health insurance? Fine. But we do cover removing those growths from under your skin.
Mm-hmm.
We do cover cosmetic surgery after an accident. We do cover but you got to buy it. And employees negotiate with employers through unions to get health coverage for the workers. But going back to let's go back to General Flynn. There should be, and think about this, every inner city destitute person who can't afford legal services when they get pinched would be able to sit there and say, well, I didn't do it, and I can prove I didn't do it, and I'm not going to plea bargain because I'm not going to take a hit on this. And he goes to trial, and he gets found not guilty. The state doesn't want to go to trial for fear they're going to lose the trial. Okay? And his lawyer gets paid.
Yeah, but you're going to find a lawyer who's going to be willing to take that gamble. In other words, it's like a civil contingency fee case. When a lawyer says that you don't have to pay the lawyer unless you win, the lawyer's taking a gamble that you're going to win. When you pay the lawyer as you go along, then you're the one taking the gamble. So who takes the gamble in the case? You by paying the lawyer, or the lawyer by? I don't know. It's going to. The thing about criminal cases is there's a lot you don't know going into it. So it would be that would be a true gamble for an attorney to say, I'm going to represent you on the possibility that if we get a not guilty, I'm going to get paid. That's a lot to ask. Especially since people that are innocent get found guilty.
I cannot, off the top of my head, cite a name or whatever, but I'll tell you what my observation is. 90% of the people who are charged with a crime never go to trial on the crime they were charged with, for the crime they were charged with. And I don't know how many times I've heard. Do you mean
plead, or
that you're arrested for this?
Yeah.
And they're gonna want you to plead to this.
Right, because if you choose to go to trial, they usually make the charges worse. It's like, oh, you want to go to trial? Okay, well, let's add some stuff on.
That's the speeding story up in Rockville.
Yeah, but if you plead, then the plea deal is a lesser charge.
If I save you the time and the aggravation and help you clear your docket, what are you going to do for me?
Right, exactly. Okay? No, that's exactly right.
Because that's what I said up in Rockville. I said they want a $255 fine for speeding, and I said, well, let me ask you a question. I said, is it more expensive? Can you fine me more if I go to trial? They said, no, that's the maximum. I said, then work for your fucking money. Okay? If it's going to cost me $250 to plead right now, or $250 after a trial, let's go to trial. All I'm trying to say is this, is that I'm sure that there's lawyers out there that go like this to the client, okay, you're not going to go to jail, you may get a small fine, you're going to be offered to use a program or this kind of thing. There's not a lot of trials. There are not a lot of trials. I don't know what they're doing with the dockets right now, but there's not a lot of trials. And I don't know how you can have trials, criminal trials especially, without the public being present.
I can safely say, I believe, that there haven't been any criminal trials in Connecticut since March.
Okay. Can you give me my phone for a minute? Did you get an email from Peter?
I don't know. I haven't checked my email.
There's a gentleman on the Board of Firearms Permanent Examiners named Peter Cook. And Peter Cook is the longest serving member on that board. And matter of fact, he's the one that called me. But what I want to do is I want to read his email.
Are you sure that's okay with him?
It's okay.
Okay.
Peter says, I will oppose the use of computers and related computer and network software for Board of Firearm Permanent Examiners hearings. The board exists to give citizens of our state a method to appeal a denial or revocation of the appellant's state pistol permit. It was not created to aid in the growth of a state bureaucracy or to make the appeal process harder for those law-abiding citizens who wish to have a fair hearing when appealing a denial or revocation of their permit. The use of a state-suggested computer system will fail to provide proper safeguards for appellant's rights for the following reasons. Not every appellant has a computer or is hooked up to the internet. Oh, I guess they could go to the library.
Well, yeah. I mean, not every appellant has a car. I guess they could take a bus.
The internet can be and has been hacked numerous times. Whatever. Every appellant has a right to face and challenge his or her accuser and to defend himself at a fair and just hearing. And I agree with him on that. The use of computers rather than fair. Not every state witness owns a computer. The board member, not whatever. What I'm trying to say is this. I know that when you're looking at somebody, you're reading their body language. Right now, there's people on the other side of the camera, now or in the future, that will be watching this show, and they're watching our body language. You're very conscious of body language when you're up here. I'm very conscious of body language when I'm up here. And I believe that in depositions, video depositions, you see the expression, the body language, how they talk, whether they explode. Now, that may happen at the Board of Firearms, but I understand the board may be doing audio only. No video. Audio only. I guess you could call in on the phone.
Especially in a state where the standard is so vague. It's a suitability standard. So first of all, you want these board members to decide whether somebody is suitable. Don't give them any definition of what suitable means. And then you take the person that they're supposed to be examining for suitability, so you can't even see them, or even if you can see them, it's remotely. So they need to either make the standard less ambiguous, or they need to have the person there in front of them. I understand what Peter's saying, but
I understand completely what he's saying.
I also know that trials are being held remotely, civilly, and if they're going to hold trials remotely, then I think it's going to be tough to argue that administrative hearings can't be held.
Except for the fact that Peter's hearings involve a state and federal constitutional right.
Well, you could argue
Civil is civil.
Well, constitutional claims are in civil cases. They can be. Yeah.
What I'm saying is,
But I get what you mean.
yeah, in other words, we know, and we've
It's
been
not.
over
It's
this.
not like a slip and fall.
We've been
case.
talking about we've been talking about this for 10 years, okay?
Definitely.
And it goes like this. If you are at the Board of Firearms Permit Examiners, you are not a disqualified person. In other words, if you're a convicted felon, you don't even get to sit in the chair. Go home. You're a convicted felon. You have a right to argue, no, I'm not. But if you are, go home. You're not. You don't get a hearing. You don't have any title to it. If you've been convicted of one of the 11 misdemeanors, okay, and you've got a criminal history, you have a right to argue that the record is wrong. But if the record is right, don't sit in the chair. You don't get a hearing. The only thing the Board of Firearms Permit Examiners does is judge suitability. They hear a story. Oh, yeah, he got arrested. Okay. How many times has he been arrested? Never before. Did he hurt anybody? No. Or he dropped his gun. He left his gun behind. He did what? Suitability. That's all it is. But suitability is judged, in my opinion, by measuring the person in front of you. And if you're not measuring the person in front of you, then Peter's right.
Some of it goes into reading the police reports, reading, if there are any, reading recommendation letters. And I mean, there are other considerations that go into it, but I get what you're saying. But on the other hand, people that are denied a permit or their permit's revoked, maybe they don't want to wait 3 or 4 years for a hearing. And so if you give them a choice, say, listen, do you waive whatever right you have to be present and face your accusers and just want to use remote, and give them the choice? Some people might say,
The
no, I'll
Veterans
wait 4
Administration
years.
is doing that.
Right.
If you want your decision sooner than waiting for a hearing in front of a law judge in Washington or whatever, then we'll do it over the internet, video conference.
Yeah, they
The
give people
judge
the
will be
choice.
in Washington. You and your representative will be sitting here in Connecticut, possibly with somebody else. Okay, and you do it remotely. They do it, but I have a problem.
I mean, what about? I don't know if they're doing this in state court yet. I don't know if they are. I know up in Massachusetts, they do some arraignments remotely. I know in federal court they are. And talk about at a time when your rights really are foremost is at an arraignment, right? So those are being done remotely. There's no judgment of suitability going on either. Yeah. So having to face the person isn't probably nearly as important as if you're doing.
It's one thing to hear it. When you ask a police officer a question at a Board of Firearms Permit Examiners hearing, and the officer repeats time and time again, he says, I do not recall. Okay? It's not just the words. It's when you're sitting there and you're seeing a police officer in his uniform with a badge and the gun, okay, with the authority to arrest people, and he sits there and he pleads the policeman's Fifth Amendment. I don't recall. What do you mean you don't recall?
Well, I think you and I noticed that a lot more.
Oh,
I'm not sure it matters to judges. I'm not sure it matters to prosecutors. Well, I know it doesn't matter to prosecutors. And juries, they just look at the person with their nice shiny uniform or their nice suit up there. And, even in this day and age, that's what they do. So I'm telling you, video trials, remote trials may be better in some criminal cases, because then you're going to have a jury actually listening to what the officer's saying without, he or she sitting up there in that demeanor they have in that uniform where they practically say anything they want and get away with it.
which, because my mind, you start talking, I start thinking, and sometimes I wander outside the guardrails of our conversation and, try to sneak back in some point. But think about that. We've got a group of people in this country that want to downsize law enforcement. They want to get rid of them.
Downsize. I like
Downsize, yeah, they want to downsize law enforcement. Okay. But when you've got a police officer who's doing really nasty shit, you try to keep it. What's going on?
Well, I think it's different people that are doing those.
I'll give you an
two things.
example. I'll give you an example. Last week I didn't talk about the incident on Prospect Street, did I? Where the high-speed chase?
No, I don't think you did.
Okay.
Can't remember.
Week and a half ago, my nephew Nicholas, who shoots fires and accidents, called me on the phone and said that he was being told that he couldn't record at an accident scene, crime scene, accident scene, in the town of Wethersfield. I thought about it and I said, yeah, I'm going to go out and see what's going on. Something don't sound right. So I drove to the scene and I stood well out of the scene. I was not in a crime scene. Well, let me put it this way. If a policeman defines a crime scene as being a point on the earth where you can view the evidence or view the body of a victim or view the arrest of a suspect, if simply observing, if you can see it from where you're standing, you're in a crime scene. If that's the way they're defining it. Because that's the way they're defining it. But I went out and I was confronted by a Connecticut State Trooper by the name of LeClaire. And I have his body camera footage. It was requested. Thank you. And I have it. And now I've asked for all of the Wethersfield, local Wethersfield Police Department body camera footage. And I believe that the state of Connecticut just passed a law regulating when you can and when you can't do a high-speed chase. And the facts of this case are the city of Hartford and the state police have a task force. That somehow the task force got involved in a motor vehicle chase. That motor vehicle chase ran north to south through the center of Wethersfield on a road called Ridge Road. You can Google it. You can Google Maps it. Ridge Road, Wethersfield. The full length of Ridge Road, from the Hartford town line by the golf course, all the way down to the Wethersfield Country Club, and then they took a right-hand turn on Prospect Street, Route 287. Well, the car being chased went through road spikes, you know, them tire spikes, kept going, and went around the corner, rolled over, clipped a tree. One was ejected and killed. The other one was ejected and they were doing CPR on the girl. And they're sitting there saying, well, you can't tape victims. You can't videotape victims. You can't videotape people that are injured. Get the fuck away from me. Where did you learn that? Who told you that? That's not true. Okay. So you ask the state trooper, you're aware of the fact that they amended state law in 2015. And it doesn't say I can do anything to you. It says I get to sue your boss. Because it happens. Because he didn't train you. That's what it comes down to. And I'm now asking for all of the state police dash cam and body camera footage involved in that chase. I'm going to ask Hartford for theirs. I'm going to ask Wethersfield, I've asked for all of theirs, and I'm going to ask the state police. So, state police, Hartford, and Wethersfield. I want all of your dash and body camera footage.
The body cam that you received from the state police, did that have the portion on it where the officer touched you?
Oh yeah,
it did. Okay.
And it has him saying, it has me saying to him, you know, let's go, take me away. I'm not backing up this time. And then there was a very nice Wethersfield sergeant. I felt bad for her because, you know, the state police are in charge. The state police are in charge. Well, I'm not done with this. I'm not done with this. They're going to deny me body camera footage. I know they are. Because what I can do is begin to piece together, looking from this person's body camera, I'll see me standing there.
Right.
Then another person will catch me and I'm standing there. And it'll show that I wasn't moving around. And then when you have a fatal accident, the accident reconstruction team comes out and it goes like this. Where is the evidence on the ground? Where is the evidence in the car? they'll be able to tell exactly how fast that car was going, because there's a little thing in the steering column that records the last 6 seconds. You know, it's like the double fatal. They were doing 106 miles an hour. But what's going to happen is they're going to have to, on a piece of paper and a map, they're going to start marking down, okay, where they found the headlight, where they found the door handle, where the rear view mirror landed, where the seats are, and I know who this is. Hit 1 or something?
Yeah.
Hello, John. Hello.
Hi, this is Gary Nance. How you doing?
Hey, Jerry, what's going on?
I just muted my computer here.
You just what?
I muted my computer.
Oh, he turned his computer down. Yeah.
Okay.
But I'm getting an echo.
It is an echo. I don't know if the phone's too close. Let's try that
I
a little
don't know.
bit, maybe.
How's that? Is that any better?
That's better.
Well, I got to tell you,
Okay.
I use Google Voice. The number that you see up there, the 249-1776, is a Google Voice number
Okay.
that forwards into the studio here. So, go ahead, Gary.
Okay. Well, I think earlier you were just talking about the health information, patient
Right.
Act, HIPAA.
Yes.
And a lot of first responders, I think they get a lot of training on that, and then out in the field, they try to enforce that against anybody with a camera.
Correct. I'm aware of this, but go ahead.
They try to enforce the Patient's Privacy Records Act against photography of the crime scene or the accident scene or whatever.
Right.
Yes, you're exactly right. Hi, Gary. You're exactly right. They do reference that. Ed and I have spoken about that, and it's not relevant.
No.
It's not relevant to something that's happening in public, and that can be seen by people that are watching and who have cameras.
And Gary knows this.
Yeah.
They can hold up tarps and block your view.
So when it happens, the photographer has to, remind, tell the first responder that HIPAA does not apply to news gathering or photography.
All right, let me see
It
if
only applies to the records in the hospital.
Gary.
That's what I was gonna say.
Okay, but and let me, just for everybody that's on the other side of the camera, you shouldn't have to educate an EMS or police or fire at the scene of an incident but once. In other words, if there's an incident in Vista, California, and it's brought to the sheriff's attention, or it's brought to the fire chief, or whoever, battalion commanders who handles Vista, he needs to pass it down to his subordinates that HIPAA doesn't apply to news media or anybody else with a camera.
Yeah.
Otherwise, go in your fucking house and get shot. Go in your house and get hit by a car. Go in your house and speed around the living room in a car. Do what you want to do. But if you're going to do it in your front yard, or you're going to do it in the middle of a public road, you've got a good chance of ending up on YouTube.
Right.
Well, that doesn't count for the person that's just driving the speed limit on their way to the store and is doing absolutely nothing wrong, and they get hit by a car going 106 miles an hour through no fault of their own. They didn't ask to be involved in that incident. They didn't ask to be out.
It's been years since I got it. It's been years since I read it, but I know you've seen it. The letter that I got from a mother whose son was charged with negligent homicide because he was allegedly operating at night with no lights on. And obviously, when the police got there, the car lights were not on. Mm-hmm. So they charged the car he smashed into, the lights were on. his vehicle, the lights were not on. And they charged him with negligent homicide because the lights in his vehicle were not on. It was a Jeep, I think. And what happened was the family hired a legal investigator. The legal investigator knew who I was. Was married to my biological father. And she asked me, she said, "Do you have video of that night?" I said, "Sure do." And I sat down, showed her the video. I had to use a VCR and a TV. You couldn't do it on a computer. And she said, "Can I get a copy of that?" I said, "Absolutely." Next thing I heard was the charges were dropped. Because what happened was, I got there right after the first couple of firemen got there. And the first couple of firemen that got there cut the battery cable to the car for safety purposes, which cut out the lights. And they had not yet cut out the lights in the other car. So when the police arrived, there's no lights. Lights, no lights. So they charged him with negligent homicide. But then when they looked at my video, I had video before the police got there where both vehicles' lights were on. And then they went out and looked for fire, and fire had cut the cables. That's why there's times that, you know, that person who's just going out to the grocery store and gets hit by 106 miles an hour is awful happy if they survive, or, you know, whatever. They're awful happy to have the evidence of what happened.
Yeah, no, I'm not arguing against it,
No.
certainly. I'm just saying that everybody's in a different position. But I really think part of it on the part of police officers is not ignorance. EMS, police
No.
officers, first responders, it's not ignorance. It's their own belief that it's ghoulish or unnecessary or intrusive for people to take photographs or record accident scenes or any other scenes. Also, it prevents them from controlling the narrative, and I think that has to do more with crime scenes.
That is the biggest issue that I find, is they're trying to control the narrative.
Right.
When they write their report, they don't want anything to conflict with what their report's going to say.
So yeah, I'm just not sure it's ignorance. I think they figure the means justifies the ends. We're gonna tell people bullshit. We're gonna violate the law, but it's for the end result that we believe in, that people should be given their privacy and not photographed.
Let me ask. I need to ask Master Control.
Well, let's see. Let's see if Gary has anything else out there in California.
No, pretty quiet out here. I haven't been on for about 10 months.
Navy or Marine?
Marine base, I'm sorry.
Miramar, right?
Well, yeah,
Yeah, that's crazy.
but
But
yeah,
but I got you. But okay.
So Gary, we're gonna go ahead
I
and
think that incident was lifted. I just haven't visited the base yet.
Right. Let us know what it is.
Yeah,
But now,
so-
Master Control, are we going out to News Now Houston? Okay. Now,
I'll let you guys go. I'll get back.
no, stay on the phone and just listen to this.
Okay.
For several years, there's been issues going on with News Now Houston and local law enforcement down in that area of Texas. I didn't know that there's Google chat rooms. And evidently there's groups in this country, there are groups of people that form chat rooms, private chat rooms, and go in there, and what they say in the chat room is nothing like they say on a radio that's recorded. So pay attention to Google chat rooms and Dave Warden.
in other words, what you're talking about is with law enforcement, when they speak on formal communications, it's recorded and known about, but when they go to chat rooms, it may not be, right, Ed?
Right.
Let's let Gary go.
Okay, Gary,
Thanks
go.
for calling in,
We're gonna-
Gary.
What, we got 10 minutes left? Okay. 15, 20 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
What, want me to talk?
Who's this?
We're gonna let you go, Gary.
No, we got
another
we
phone
got
call.
we got another call.
Bye-bye. I don't know if Hi, Summary Judgment Talk Show.
Hello?
Let's talk a little bit about JC's call earlier.
Hello?
Yeah, I was just calling to see if I can get on summary judgment.
You're on right now.
Yeah, hi, this is Rob. We talked a long time ago about the Brady Act here in Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
I remember
And,
that.
Yeah, I've been honestly trying to get that, but every place I go to, I'm getting stoned. Like, they won't release any information. Like, they won't even do public record requests for me, nothing.
Remind me what kind of information you were looking for. I do remember your phone call, but
He was looking for a Brady list.
the Brady list. Oh,
Looking for
okay.
you were looking for the Brady list, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Supposedly Philadelphia has one. All right, listen, I don't mean to cut you off. Call us next week, but I'm short on time, and I at least want to get this out. Okay?
Yes, sir.
You
Talk-
can stay and listen.
Well, don't make people stay.
No, listen.
Yes, sir.
About 20 years ago, there was a cellular service called Nextel. And Nextel was bought up by Sprint. And they used to have a feature in their phone system called walkie-talkie. And I could talk to a Nextel customer walkie-talkie in San Diego if I had his information. And they still had programs you could put on your phone and do the same thing. What happened was law enforcement figured that if everybody on the Midnight Squad had a Nextel cell phone, they could program it so they could all talk on a network of themselves and never have anything they say recorded by the audio 24/7 audio tape system at headquarters. In other words, there's an incident Hart didn't have to. There was a sergeant who was talking on the radio about the gorillas in the mist. Okay? And that was a serious racial comment that was made. Had he done it on Nextel, nobody would have ever found out about it, or no one would have ever been able to evidence it. But when they put cell phones in police cars, they created hell on earth for everybody as far as law enforcement goes.
It's hard to pin them down.
Yeah, because now they can talk on privately, never have a record of the conversation, okay, and start to tell or put together their combined narrative.
But some police departments issue cell phones to their officers.
They do.
And they still don't provide that information.
They do not.
In the course of a case in court.
I know a policeman that had a hotspot and a laptop and was running his real estate business out of his cruiser. Jesus. Yeah.
So call back next week and call more towards 1 o'clock, and we'll follow up on this Brady List issue because it's been a while since we've spoken about it.
Yes, ma'am.
Now,
Take care.
let me, before you go, you subscribe to, so you're obviously getting an alert when we go on the air, right?
Yes.
Okay, so if we go on next week, whether it's 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock, your computer or your cell phone will tell you that we're coming on live.
Yes, sir.
That's all I needed to know. I'll be happy to take your call in the first 5 minutes of next week's show.
Have a good week.
Okay? Why don't we cut it off now?
Yeah, we're going to close
Okay.
the show down. Everybody have a great post-Thanksgiving week, and we'll see you back next Saturday.